Welcome to the war. I waited. You didn't do anything, so I went. I normally wait longer.
I didn't think I did anything, did I?
Yeah, you started. You started your throat clear.
Oh. I was like, ugh.
You're all good. You're all good. You're all good. Welcome to the Warband, the World of Warcraft podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Swaglock, and with me today is our amazing host, Chicken. Dude, Chicken, it has been it's kind of a crazy week with Thanksgiving here in the States. I've been home a ton, but also not playing WoW as much as I intended to. Not for bad reasons. I've been busy. I just ended up a lot busier this week than I thought I would be. But before I go into some of that, what have you been up to, man?
Yeah, so this is the first week that I haven't felt like absolute death in probably like a couple weeks. I might be starting to sound normal. Maybe I don't. It's very possible that I don't.
Yeah, man, dude, have you not been playing your Death Knight or something? You trying a different class?
What? What are you talking about?
You said first time you didn't feel like death. Death Knights are technically undead. You said you're finally starting to sound normal. Death Knights usually have like a voice filter over all their.
No, they don't.
Yeah,
Stop.
they do. Yeah, they do. Use an emote on the Death Knight next time you play a game. Death Knights have a filter over their voice.
Oh, interesting.
Yep,
I'll have to try it.
It's real. Yeah, they do.
I'm a little sus about that, but I'll have to try it. But yeah, no, it's been busy. I kind of had that same feeling where even when I was like loading in today, I was like, I feel like I haven't talked to Swag in like a month, and it's literally only been like a week.
I know.
I don't know.
It really it's really starting to feel that way, isn't it?
Maybe it's because we didn't raid this week.
Yeah, we did not with Thanksgiving and everything else. And I was kind of tempted to maybe on Wednesday to do something small, but then Wednesday came around and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna really take the week off and like totally just relax. And it was a good time. But I've been playing a bit. I've been playing a bit. I was streaming last night. We were doing some giveaways of the Mountain Dew bike. One of our community members was offering up some codes for us to give away, which was super nice.
Dang,
so we were giving,
cool.
we were giving those out on stream, and then afterwards, I made the mistake of like drinking a Monster. I don't know how I ended up with a Monster. I haven't had Monster in like years, ever since I started drinking like G Fuel instead. But
yeah,
I was I mean, for those who don't know, I was
like a teenager.
Yeah, I was once sponsored by Monster, or not Monster, by G Fuel, and so like I have so much. I mean, you're making fun because it's a joke at this point, but I had so much like extra that like it's taking me so long to like almost finish it off now. But I was just craving. I was craving a Monster last night for whatever reason. I knew I was tired. I knew I was gonna be streaming late, and I was like, you know what, old time's sake, I'm gonna sip on one while I stream.
Yeah.
And so there I am, kind of getting close to the normal time I'd wrap up stream. I'm just like, I'm sipping the Monster. I don't want to wrap up yet. And I end up just opening up Hardcore WoW at like midnight. I'm just like going to Hardcore WoW at midnight. I think I played for like 2 hours or something. And,
oh my gosh!
I was just slowly leveling away, which was a fun experience. It's cool right now because like the starting zones are just packed with people because every time you die you have to start over again. So the starting zones feel really full, which adds a lot of liveliness to the server, but then at the same time, it's kind of frustrating because in Classic, when you kill a mob, only the person who hits the mob first can get loot from it, unless you're in a party. I think if you're in a party, everybody can get loot, but if you're not in a party, only the person who hit the mob first can get loot. And so it was a little annoying on general quests and stuff. Not the worst, just mildly inconvenient. Like if I saw somebody fighting something, I can't jump in and help them out and then get loot.
Yeah.
It was the worst though. There's one quest with the orcs where you have to go kill a very specific guy in a cave and loot something off him. And I walk up and there's 10 people around him.
Ooh.
And I was like, no. And so there I am. I like make a macro real quick. I make a macro real quick to like target nearest enemy and then spam Earth Shock or something. And I'm just like smacking because that was like my one auto cast ability. Because if I try to auto attack, it would be too slow. So like I need like a insta cast ability. So I just like was smacking that macro. I did get it. I ended up getting the item, which worked out. But
dang.
I was kind of vibing with that. Still pushing keys. I'm 3 portals short away from having all portals, which feels good. I'm 3 away. So it's feeling good. Just kind of slowly making my progress there. But I am feeling very confident in 10s right now. It's just making sure I know like all the dungeons well enough.
What's your most confident dungeon?
Ooh, good question. Dawnbreaker is one that I think I particularly feel really good in Dawnbreaker. This one's a controversial one, but in the 10s range, I actually really like Stonevault a lot. I think Stonevault's a really fun one. It doesn't.
That is kind of controversial.
A little controversial. But I particularly like Stonevault. I think it's a really good one. Those two, Mist of Tyranid Scythe is always a blast. Mist of Tyranid Scythe is a fascinating one because this week I was helping some guildies out, and I ran Mists. I want to say I ran it 2 or 3 times this week helping guildies out, and I ran it on low keys, right? So like 2s to 4s, 2 to the 4, right, range.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, like lately, I've been doing mists on like 8s and 10s, and when you go in at that range, most people know what the dungeon is and know how to do the dungeon. If they don't, that's more concerning. But most people know the dungeon.
Yeah,
we go in, we do the mechanics, we get out, and it's a real simple dungeon. It's probably one of the easiest ones this season. However, if you don't know the mechanics, that second boss is brutal on groups.
Yeah, it is.
And so, man, by the way, I had a blast. Let me just say, if you were one of the guildies running with me, I loved being with you guys, be able to help out. It was fun. It was genuinely a really fun time. However, I definitely noticed that nobody knew how to do the specifically like that second boss, specifically the patterns mechanic where you have to find the one that has the different pattern than the rest. That one's a little bit tough.
Isn't that just the same as the maze? Like, were they just not doing the maze?
It's the same with the maze, but generally, if I'm running through, I just kind of solve the maze.
Oh, you just handle the maze.
I'm pretty quick at the maze. I have a weak order that helps, but even if the weak order doesn't catch it, I'm pretty quick at the maze myself.
Yeah,
And so I was trying to ping. I would try to ping the right illusion during the boss fight, but then the problem is I'm trying to ping where the right illusion is. Nobody's watching the fox, so I'm kind of using Death and Decay to slow the fox and Ice Chains to kind of stop it. While at the same time also trying to make sure I interrupt Patty Cake. And so you kind of hit too many things while you're trying to solve that puzzle as a tank, and then you're like, crap, now I'm frozen, or crap, now I got Patty Caked. And so, but it's fun. I had a great time. I love being able to help players learn dungeons. And that was one of those cases where afterwards we chatted about, we're like, oh yeah, here's how you do this mechanic, here's how it works, here's some strategies for that, things I look for, the way I think through it. But it was a good time. I had a good time. So I've had a lot of fun in retail this week, and I've had a lot of fun in classic,
which is kind of a surprise because who has fun in classic?
Dude, classic,
other than people that enjoy classic.
Classic's a vibe. It's just a very different experience than retail. It's very different.
Yeah, but see, it's not for me.
Have you played it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you played it.
Are we talking classic, or was this vanilla classic?
Well, this was classic. Vanilla classic is classic.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
This was hardcore. This was hardcore that I was playing. But still same kind of concept.
Oh, so it's not like See, I'm not gonna lie. Classic and all its branches always confuse me. I literally never, because there's Season of Discovery, there's hardcore, there's classic, now there's vanilla classic. I've always been so confused by all of them.
You know what? I bet you we have a lot of listeners who are probably confused. I get this question a lot on my how to play or beginner's guide to World of Warcraft video on YouTube.
Yeah,
I get this question a lot of should I play in classic? Should I play in retail? Which mode should I play in? So obviously retail is Modern WoW. Everybody who's listening to this podcast probably knows that. It's the War Within. Then you have World of Warcraft Classic, and that kind of has a few options. So you have WoW Classic, which is just vanilla, what we call vanilla World of Warcraft, right? WoW with no expansions whatsoever. No expansions at all.
Which was just released, right?
It's been out for a while. However, just recently,
really?
I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, they opened up fresh servers for it. And so what that meant was everybody starting on the servers is starting from zero again, and they're going through the rotation of raids. So not all raids will be open at once. So they're kind of doing that. They always seem to have classic servers available for vanilla WoW. Original WoW, they always seem to have those servers available. And then over time they'll branch out and they'll be okay, now we're moving into the next expansion, Burning Crusade, then the next expansion, Wrath. Then the next expansion, Cataclysm, which is where we are right now, as we're kind of gearing up, I think, for Mists of Pandaria Classic. So you usually have Classic, and then you have Classic expansion at the same time, right? So right now it's right. So right now it's Cataclysm, with Mop coming out soon.
Yeah.
And then you also have Season Discovery, which is classic vanilla, right? Like no expansion World of Warcraft, except it's got some modifications to it. It's got some twists to it. As the name implies, it's designed that you discover new things as you're doing it. Some of those new things are abilities for your classes that can make your spec maybe more tanky. Maybe you can make your mage a healer, right? So you have like rogue tanks and mage healers and warlock tanks. It's kind of cool. There's some like really cool twists and turns to it. There's some quests and story stuff that's unique. There's new dungeons or raids that they've added in that maybe are modifications of other dungeons, or they're entirely new content altogether, or content as assets that just never made it into WoW, but they're now using those assets. So Season of Discovery is kind of like, think like modified Classic, if that makes sense. It's kind of its own thing. It's fun. If you like Classic but want a different experience, a little bit faster experience normally, that's what that's for. You don't need to have 40 people for a raid team, right? Like a lot of the raids I think are like 10-man raids or something like that. So it is a little bit different of experience. And then you also have Classic Hardcore, which is vanilla Classic, no expansions, except the big rule for this one is if you die, your character cannot be rezzed. Basically, you're deleting that character if they die, right? So if a character dies, they're done. They can't be played anymore. And you need to start a new one. And I don't know why I end up going for hardcore instead of classic, because I know if this character dies, I don't know if I'll make another one. I'll be like, okay, I guess that's it. I'm done.
Well, that's the reason why.
Probably, right.
Because it gives you more of like a scapegoat almost. Like you're like, oh, like if I die, like I don't have to play this anymore.
Yeah, but there's also something enticing about the idea of like, okay, I need to watch every step, right? Like I'm not just throwing like YouTube on in the background and running through killing things. I'm like, okay, every step I take is important. I'm like, my eyes are on the screen constantly going, okay, will something kill me? Is there a mob hiding that I don't see? Because if I pull this mob and another mob attacks me, I can't take two at once, right? And so it is really cool. And so it's been fun to play. I've been making an orc shaman. I've been having fun with that.
Yeah, so that was a pretty good summary of all the different classics, if you will. Which would you suggest someone play if they're like someone like me? What would you suggest? And I will say that we did play classic Wrath of the Lich King to get the mount for retail.
We did. We played the DK starting zone, which I remember at the time playing the DK starting zone when it first came out. I was like, wow, Death Knight, so cool. But like in hindsight, that starting zone is such a bore to go through. It actually it's kind of bad. It's kind of bad. You know, my suggestion for classic, and again, this is coming from somebody who only pops in the classic occasionally when things are exciting, is to do what I do basically. Just pop in a classic occasionally when something's exciting. So right now, the exciting thing in classic is classic and hardcore, right? Those are the two exciting things. I'd probably pop into hardcore and try that out. There's if you go to the anniversary tab for servers, that's where you'll find everybody at. The conversations are fun. People are really engaged. It's really active. There's a ton of streamers right now, playing hardcore. Like Tyler One, Tim the Tap Man, Miskiff. They're all playing hardcore at the moment. They have like a big roleplay guild that they've been working on called OnlyFans.
That's kind of neat, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of dope. It's kind of a really cool experience that they've been creating, and so that's awesome.
Yeah, I might have to jump into hardcore classic. I don't know. The freaking DK starting zone classic just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But I think there's a couple things that I just didn't like. I didn't like the text chat. Like that was really annoying. But I think you can fix that with an add-on. So
yeah,
there's just a couple things that I was like really turned off from.
Yeah.
And I think
have an add-on. I have an add-on for Classic that takes all the NPC like quest text and whatnot, and it has AI voices read it all.
That's almost worse.
No, it's actually awesome. I love it.
What?
Yeah, because you can just skip through. When you don't want to listen to it, you can just skip through it. It's you can accept.
Well, that's not bad.
So usually what I do is I accept the quest, and then it's just the guy, like a little picture box of the guy pops up. And it just like reads the quest text to me while I'm already running off starting the quest.
Oh, okay, that's not as bad then. That's not as bad.
No, it kind of makes the role feel bigger. I mean, you know, it is a little bit slower. I think was the issue that you were having was that the text was like scrolling down as you're trying to read it.
Yeah, dude.
Oh yeah, there's a setting to
like,
disable that. There's a setting to disable that.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was just taking forever. Like I was like,
yeah, there's a setting to disable that where it auto fills like right away. Like the whole thing just is there.
Oh, okay. See, that's where, that's what I needed.
It's in your settings. There's a setting for that just make your text automatic. Just like
because at the time I was just like, I don't really care. Yeah, I just want to get this mount and go on my merry way.
It is a cool mount. I do like it.
So yeah, well,
back in the day, I made a super random. Back in the day, I made a. Remember when like machinimas and like random like music videos are really popular on YouTube, where you just take some gameplay or something. Yeah, so back in the day, I made like I think I used like a Foo Fighters song with a bunch of like video capture of me questing through the TK starting zone.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, man. That was I don't know why I did that. Hopefully no one ever finds it. Please. I don't want it to ever be found. You
should find it and upload it. Re-upload it.
No, gosh, no. I would like that YouTube channel to stay dead. If I'm being really honest. Yeah. It never has to come back.
Yeah, so seems like you kind of messed around with Classic a little bit. You know, we're getting into dungeons, back into the grind on retail, and you know, I've been. I think I told you last week when we ran that 10. I was like, oh, next week I'm gonna get like full 10s in my vault, and now I've literally ran 110.
Oh my gosh!
I don't think I'm gonna get like any more dungeons done this week. Oh my goodness. It's just been one of those weeks, and my wife's birthday is tomorrow, and I'm like, I'm not going to play at all tomorrow probably. And I typically don't play on Mondays just because, you know, my work schedule is a little more vigorous, and you know, I like to spend time with my wife when I get home.
Absolutely.
So I was like, oh, great. But I think I might try to run one after we're done filming the podcast, just because, first of all, I have a 10 City of Threads. But
I like City of Threads.
This is really selfish of me. I didn't want to brick my own key, so I queued up for someone else's key in the same key, a 10 City of Threads.
I've done that. I've done that before where I'm like, oh, I want to learn this key a little bit before I list my own. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was already a 10.
Yeah, no, I've done that. I've done that.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shame in that. Yeah, there's no shame.
I felt kind of bad about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, right? Because you're going into this key, maybe not totally 100% sure you can do it, but there's a good chance that you'll actually do great at it. It's just hard to tell. I think, though, that the thing about that's important to keep in mind is, like, that's just the nature of listing or not listing your key. I'm generally a big proponent of listing your own key. However, not listing your key is less risky, right? Because if you fail, who cares? That's not your key. With that said, though, don't come to me and complain that no one's inviting you to their groups, because then I'll just tell you to list your own key. That tends to be
I agree.
How I work.
Yeah, no, there is that trade-off. Like, I do agree that if you're having trouble getting invited to keys, you should just list your own key. And at the same time, it's like, well, I do feel kind of bad because I totally ran this guy's key. And I don't want to say I was the problem that we didn't time it, but I definitely did something wrong that I will never do again. And it's right after the second boss when you're going upstairs and then you're about to go in that palace. Which direction do you go?
Left. No, I go right.
You go right, really?
Like in City of Threads, when you get up into the final room with the two bosses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually go right. Either or works. They're just I think they're mirrored of each other.
Yeah, they pretty much are for the most part. And I've always gone right too, literally every time.
Yeah.
And the one guy in the dungeon was like, why'd we go right? Like, is there a reason? And I was like, I don't know. I've always gone right. And we literally like wiped there, and like pretty bad too. Like that, I'm pretty sure that cost us the dungeon. Like, I think we would have timed it if it wasn't for that point.
That first pack though is just one of the big guys and like two of the small ones, right? It's not like unless your group pulled maybe like extra packs on top of them.
I think that's what might have happened, or someone just ran into one of the webs and like released one of the like little minion guys, and they just started wreaking havoc and started blowing, bouncing people all over the place.
Yeah.
And it just went really bad. And yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
I was like, well, you live, you learn. It was a really good dungeon. I mean, City of Threads kind of scares me a little bit. It was the first 10 I've ever tanked, so felt pretty good about it at the end of the day.
No, you should feel good, dude. You should feel good.
Yeah, even though you tell me that I'm not allowed to tank dungeons anymore.
Dude, ask me to tank. Just ask me to come tank your keys. I'll do it. I got no problem doing it.
I know.
I like tanking.
I'm just bad at asking people to run keys with me. I don't know why.
I've been getting I'm pretty good at it. I like when I know I want to run like a key, especially if it's my own key, I'm like shooting messages out in Discord. I'm like, yo, key.
You're like,
key.
Hey, run.
Yo, and then you get
everyone's like, yeah.
People want to do keys. They like them. They like doing keys.
I know.
So it really is helpful. I mean, listen, if you're listening to the podcast and you're in our Discord, dude, when you want to run keys, just jump into the WoW general chat and be like, yo, anybody want to run keys? I guarantee you other people on Discord will be like, I'd love to run keys. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think there'll be other people that want to run keys.
But also, I say you're not allowed to tank anymore because you're a really good DPS. I think you're a better DPS than you are a tank. I'll come tank. I'm serious, dude. You're a really good DPS.
Yeah, but better than I am a tank.
I see your numbers, dude. I see your numbers. You're a
but you never ran. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, it's hard though because you've never ran a yeah.
Well, sounds like that guy in your party would agree with me. So.
Oh yeah, and it's funny. The healer was a. Oh my goodness, why am I like blanking on this? He was a. It doesn't even matter what he was. It was a priest, and he like messaged me like on like the DL, like on the down low, and was just like, "I've never healed a tank as good as you."
Aw,
and I was sweet. Like, "Oh, well, that was pretty nice."
Yeah,
I was
that was
like,
very sweet. Nice, dude. Nice.
So I felt pretty good about that. And he's I mean, at the end of the day, he's basically like, yeah, like DK is just kind of. They're not trash this expansion, but they're just not easy to work with. And I'm like, hey, I get that. DKs aren't easy to work with this expansion.
I just read a comment in our guild Discord from somebody because I was kind of making fun of them for a group they were running a 10 with, and they go, dude, where were you? We invited a different Blood DK, and now Blood DKs are banned from my groups. I was like,
my goodness.
Whoops. But that is nature. I will admit though, in your story, you're saying that like the guy was complaining about. To you, right? Like in chat, he was just like, why'd you go this way? Right? Like, why'd you go this way? I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
As a tank, I may have left a group or two when people do that. Especially if it's not my key. Especially if it's not my key and it's the party leader. Let me add that very specific, which will probably lead into the first main topic of today in WoW news. But very specifically, if I'm in a group and the leader, the person whose key it is that we're running, starts like complaining about my route or my pools or something, I have on rare occasions, not all the time, it's not even frequent, on rare occasions, maybe 2 or 3 times over the last couple of years, I have just straight gone, okay, and left the group right then and there.
Oh, dang.
It's just annoying. It's annoying as heck to me, right? Like if you have a problem with it, like shoot me a message and explain why you think another option is better. Awesome. But if you're just gonna like, I don't understand. I genuinely do not understand why people like ask these pointed questions like that in group chat, right? Like, why are they like, why you do that? What? Can you like, give me a more defined question? Can you help me out? Like, what are you trying to like? Sometimes you just respond back and say, because I'm stupid, and I just keep going, right? Like I don't know what to say. Like, what answer do you want? Like, what answer do you want? I mean, I guess sometimes, like, I would like to think that they're assuming I know something they don't know, and they want to learn from me.
Yeah.
But I would gamble that that's not true. I would gamble that they're just trying to like. It's more of like, why are you doing this? Right?
Yeah, like a nag almost.
Yeah. And so,
And,
yeah, I have. If it's not the party leader, though, if it's not the party leader who's being the nag, I'll bite my tongue because I'm just like, okay, I don't want to like ruin this guy's key just because one person is kind of a jerk. But if it's the person who owns the key doing it, I got no problem being the worst. And here's the thing, you know what? They have to let me win because I'm the tank. You can't keep going if I leave. I mean, you can't keep going if anybody leaves. But like, sorry, I get petty sometimes.
Yeah, I could tell. Jeez, dude.
But that does lead into our first question. Or first topic
of the podcast that we might already be like way into.
Yeah, we're actually over time already.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm kidding.
This has been nice.
I'm kidding. We're not. We're definitely not.
Okay. Well, you want to... Well, no, I'll intro because I have a lot of questions about this because I think there are times like you're talking about, like, hey, what happens if people are just being like kind of jerks, or what happens when it's obviously just not going, it's just like it's just not going to happen. Like the key is just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think this was earlier last week. I think it was like Wednesday-ish.
Yeah, shortly after our podcast came out last week, so we missed it.
Yeah, there's a post about WoW. Obviously, they were talking about how people are talking about problems with people leaving dungeons and how that goes. And for a long time, I feel like there's just been little petty things. I mean, I know there was one time where there's a stone vault and the healer was like, wow, tank, you suck, basically. And it was because they didn't know how to do the mechanic, right?
Yep.
And they were just like, peace, like, within like seconds.
Were you in that run?
No, but you've talked about it on the podcast at least twice, maybe 3 times.
I mean, and granted, at that point, I think we'd wiped to that boss twice. Maybe I think we'd wiped twice to that boss. So at that point, it's a little bit different. But yeah, I was annoyed because they were the one messing it up, not me.
Yeah, and that's like the case in point. So Blizzard released this thing that was like, hey, we're going to start implementing suspensions for people who intentionally leave Mythic Plus. And, that's going to come at some point in the future. Yeah. And to me, that raises 2 questions. One, how many times do you have to leave a Mythic Plus until the suspension kicks in? And 2, is there a specific thing, like almost like a flag that would be raised that says like, okay, like you're not going to get like slapped on the wrist for leaving this dungeon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts initially?
Oh man, dude, this is a topic we could actually go on with for a while. I'm gonna try and keep it short, and I want to keep it short because I've been cooking a YouTube video I want to do on this topic of me just ranting, but I'm trying to solidify all my ideas for it, and so I got to make sure it's pieced together in a way that actually feels fully coherent. But there's three major things I think to keep in mind. I do that a lot. I'm always like 2 things, 3 things. There's 5 things, right? Like I always list 10 things to make you a better dungeon runner. But I do always think through like kind of like lists. One, the first element of this conversation is that this isn't against the average player who has to leave a key on occasion because it's not going well. This isn't for you. Blizzard and the reason why it's not gonna happen to you is because Blizzard has to be extremely careful with this, right? Because they can't start suspending players or banning players or kicking players out of the game over like leaving a dungeon because it's 10 minutes like long, like it's 10 minutes over time, right? They have to be really careful that they don't start doing things that seem really awkward or really uncomfortable or really just like anti-player. And so
that's not a good move.
So number 1, they have to keep that in mind. Number 2, there is actually a serious problem with M+ in the sense that players are joining and just leaving to grief, right? So they're literally doing it because it's funny. And I think that's a bigger group of players than we realize. I don't think it's huge, but I think it's bigger than we realize, of players finding it funny to get into a key and then just dipping and leaving the key. I've had it happen to me one time, and it was really awkward. And luckily, it wasn't my key. I just remember being like, oh, the nice thing is for me, like we hadn't even like, I mean, we pulled like one trash pack and he left. So I just was like, okay, whatever, and kept going. So that's
like, see ya.
yeah. So that's kind of that. But
Sorry.
you also have, I think, which is the bigger issue. And when I was talking to some friends, they initially thought it was that former group, just people purely trolling. But I think when you read the context of this, I don't think it's purely trolling.
I don't think it is. No.
What I think it is it's the people who are just absolutely just trying to grind out as many like crests and rating as they can, right? And so it's the guy who gets into a key, and the moment there's one wipe, they're out. They're like, okay, we're gone. I'm gonna go find another group, because in their mind, I'm not getting enough crests from this. I'm not gonna get rating from this. There's no point in me continuing. I might as well just go find another group. They're treating it like any other game where you just like they're treating it like a speed run, if I'm being honest with you. You know, I don't know, there's no game that comes to mind right now off the top of my head that I've done this with recently. I know one. This is gonna be such an obscure reference. If you get the reference, let me know on Discord. If you get the reference, let me know on Discord. Diddy Kong Racing. Diddy Kong Racing on the N64 was a...
Oh my gosh.
Dude, it looked like a children's game, but man, that game was hard. That was a really difficult game, especially when you race against the big pig boss guy.
Yeah,
he was fast. And Chicken, if you played that game, I don't know if you remember, but like when you would race against the hard races, you would like start and then 3 seconds into the race end it and start again, because you knew you had to have that pixel perfect start. Yeah, right?
Dude, you had to be perfect.
And every move had to be perfect. And the moment you knew you messed up one time, you're out, you're starting again. And that's fine. That's fine in a game that's just you, right? When you're jumping in and you're jumping out, you're jumping in, jumping out. But that doesn't happen in Mythic Plus. If you leave a group in Mythic Plus, that whole group suffers, and the person who owns that key is now punished for your laziness, right? And so you're not punished. Nothing happens to you, but the person who you brick the key of, well, their key's bricked now because you're lazy and you want to jump into more keys. I'm sensing that that's the type of person that Blizzard is going after in this problem. The third element, right? So number one is that this is an issue that like is not really directed at it's not directed at the normal person, right? It's not directed at you and I. So don't feel like you're going to accidentally get caught up in this. You would know if this is you. No. You'll know if this is you. You're not getting accidentally caught up in it. Number two, there are people who are legitimately going into keys and leaving them constantly. Not like, oh, hey, I've done 2 in the last few months. No, like this is happening like daily, going into groups and leaving them when they're not looking perfect. Number 3, I think ultimately this is an issue that Blizzard needs to handle differently. I do not think players should be getting suspended for it. Personally,
suspension is a weird thing.
Yeah, emotionally, personally, I want them to be banned and never allowed to touch the internet ever again. I think the government should bar them from ever using the internet ever again. However, that's not the proper approach. Despite my anger towards people who do this, that's not the proper approach. The reality, you okay over there? The reality is Blizzard needs to develop a system that doesn't require them to go back and retroactively punish players for leaving Mythic Plus early. So the question is, how does Blizzard develop a system that doesn't promote or encourage dipping on keys the moment they're looking rough?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard one. I mean, when you thinking about this, I'm kind of comparing it to Raid, and you have a little different. It's a little different scenario because in Raid, if someone leaves, you just replace them, right?
Yeah.
And it's very similar though in Raid and pugs that I've ran, where people they basically do like one, and then they're like, "Oh, we wiped. Like, I'm just gonna bounce because this group is." Awful. Yep. Like they're trash, they're garbage, right?
Yep.
And it's like, that's not the case. It's just, you want that seamless run. You want to be able to just go through this and steamroll things and not have to worry about, XYZ, right?
Yep, absolutely. And there are, what are you saying?
Yeah. And that, when things like that happen in Raid, it's not that big of a deal. But, when you're talking Mythic Plus, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. That directly impacts the person whose key that is, right? It's not, it doesn't come down to, hey, we'll just grab someone else and re-brick that, or, rerun it. It's like,
yeah, for real.
Re-brick it. Especially if it's a 10, that's rough. Like, going from a 10 to a 9, I don't think people will realize how detrimental that is. Like, it's bad.
Both Triangle and Fort. It's also, I think it's important to know that there are justifiable reasons for leaving a key. Earlier, I talked about how sometimes, on rare occasions, I've left a key because I don't like the way someone talks to me in the run. That's And by the way, you might not like that I said that. That's fair. That is fair. There's no reason you have to stay in a group that's being toxic. You just don't.
Yeah, no, I agree.
There's no reason. Like, you don't have to do it. Now, if it's not the party lead, I try to stay because I do want to honor the fact that I did their key. I did a key this week where we go in and we wiped on, it was an Arakara, and we wiped, it was a 10, and we wiped on the second boss. And we went back. Yeah, wiped on the second boss, went back. There was just some confusion with one of the mechanics on the fight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it was figured out afterwards, but in the moment, there's some confusion with that fight. And so we wiped on that second boss, and we went back and started to fight again. We wiped again. And we're heading back for a third time on this boss again, ep13. And the person who holds the key just goes, guys, thank you so much for sticking this out. That means a lot. And one guy comments, he's like, no problem. I just want the vault loot. Totally fair comment.
Yeah,
and I responded back, and I just said, hey, I signed up for your key. I'm here till the end. Right? Like, that's my general, I signed up. I committed myself to running your key within a reasonable time. I'm doing that. And a reasonable time, and I think we've discussed on the pod before, does not necessarily have to be in fact, it shouldn't be in time. A reasonable time is an amount of time over time. And so we did end up, I think we wiped, by the way, we never downed this boss. We wiped, I think, 5 times to this boss.
Okay.
Yeah, and after five times, it was like, hey, I don't think this group is actually capable of completing this. And if we are capable of completing this, it's going to take a really long time. It's take a really long time. And I just knew I actually did not have that time that I could commit. I just couldn't. It wasn't like I was going to go queue up for another dungeon. I literally just could not see this to the end. And so at that point, we did end up disbanding, but it was really the group as a whole just said, yep, this is it. This is where we're at. I think Blizzard has metrics that they can look at the game and go, okay, Swag hopped into this dungeon. It clearly was not going well. They're already 10 minutes over time, and they're on the second boss. Yeah, it makes sense that the group fell apart. Then there's other runs where they're like, wait a second. This dude left after the second trash pull. What? What is going on here? Right?
And that's
Yeah. So there are just some elements, I think, that need to be taken into consideration for all of this.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. I'm interested to see how they'll take it, because I think you bring 3 good points, and I do think people are worried about, hey, what's going to happen if I just get in 2 bad dungeons back to back? Am I just going to get smacked in the mouth with a ban, right?
Yep.
And I don't think that's the case. I really don't.
Yeah, and I've talked to some people who are concerned about. They're like, am I going to get in trouble? Am I in trouble because I've left dungeons before? Am I in trouble that I've had bad dungeons and I'm getting punished now for bad dungeons?
Yeah.
And every time I hear people say that, I've started asking them hey man, how often are you the first one to leave a dungeon? And if they say it's frequent, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
If you're listening right now, you're like, dang it, I'm frequently the first one to leave a group. Listen, I'm not here to judge you, but judging you right now, I think you should take, a second and look inward and be like, hey, am I doing the right thing? Because I think if you're the one frequently leaving keys first, you probably should take a moment and self-reflect.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
Yeah. But ultimately, I think Blizzard needs to come up with a way to not incentivize this, right? So some simple things. There probably needs to be some sort of time punishment for leaving a key, right? And I don't know how this works, right? But maybe once a key is halfway through, or not, maybe not even halfway through. Maybe it's like overtime. Once a key is overtime, you can leave. I'm trying to think though, like what would be? They have to figure out a way to do some type of time punishment. I would gamble you can probably leave a key, but if you leave a second key within like a couple days or something as the first one to leave, then you're probably you probably should get like a time punishment of like, oh, can't do keys for a little while. That way you get your first one free, but then like the second one, because again, to that previous conversation, how many times leaving a key until you realize, oh, I'm the problem, right? Like, I'm always the first one leaving. So that's one. I think that I hear people talk about key depletion, whether it should exist or shouldn't exist. I do think key depletion is a good thing. It means that you're not just getting hard stuck at a difficulty that you should not be in, right? It's not like, oh, my friend carried me up to an 8, but really I should be in 4s right now. I'll never be able to run my key. Key depletion is important. Key depletion shows you where you should be. Maybe not where you want to be, but where you should be for your own skill level. So key depletion is good. I agree. However, I do think the rewards at the end of the dungeon, such as crests and valor, should be fixed. I think the valor stones and the crests dropping lower amounts for being over time. I think that's dumb. I think it should. If anything, I think dungeons should give a couple more crests if you +2 or +3 a dungeon, but not necessarily. But not necessarily like less crests for not timing. I also wouldn't complain if dungeons gave more crests as you went up higher, right? So like a 12 versus an 8, if instead of give normally 12 crests, we're at +12.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
If they're like, 12, hey, for a +12, here's 14 crests for completing this dungeon on time. I wouldn't complain, right?
I think that would. Yeah.
It incentivizes that. I just think that punishing the reward at the end of the dungeon then really de-incentivizes people to complete the dungeon, because then they're like, well, why am I even completing this? It's not going to help me. It's going to hurt me. You and I love our vault slots, but most people who are leaving keys frequently probably already have all their vault slots. They're just trying to get crests or something.
They hopefully do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that that always brings back my point. And this is more of just a personal point because I tell you this a lot. And I don't think I've ever said it on the podcast, but my point is always, why would I run anything higher than a 10? Because I don't get any better rewards. So I think doing that, incentivizing people to run higher than like a 10, even though I think people will still run higher than 10s, people will. I think that would encourage that. I think that's kind of a clutch idea. I'm not going to lie.
No, I agree. There should be a reward. And it is worth noting, too, though, that sometimes people just like running high keys because the challenge is fun, right? At the end of the day, we are playing a game. And you and I like MMOs because one of the elements of an MMO is collecting power over time. That's fun to us, right? Like, we really like that. But at the end of the day, a game is best because of the gameplay more than just the power system in that game.
Yeah. Yeah, so TBD to figure out what happens with Mythic lever ban thingy that they're working on. They didn't give like a date when it's going to be implemented. My guess is it'll probably be within season 2 sometime. Maybe like on the launch of season 2, they'll probably launch this lever ban kind of deal.
Yeah.
So
we'll find out more. The suspensions already went out.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, so the whole thing was that they're saying, hey, we've already done it. Today we issued gameplay suspensions to players who intentionally left Mythic Plus groups a great many times in the war within Season 1. This sort of behavior was either without regard for the experience of their fellow players, or in some cases, even deliberately intending to harm other experiences.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna lie, I totally read this wrong then.
Yep, it's already happened.
I don't know why. I thought they were like implementing like almost like an auto thing.
No, and that's why I really hope they come up with a system that doesn't incentivize leaving early. Because again, though, right now the system kind of does, right? It's kind of like, hey, once you know it's not going to end early, you're not punished. The person who owns the key is punished. So you're not punished. If you complete it over time, you're not getting any of the rewards that you want to get. It's more time effective, right? That's the problem. Is it more time effective for you to leave the group, or is it more time effective for you to stay? Which, by the way, speaking of being time effective, I'm going to be time effective right now for the podcast and move us into another conversation point that you have. We're going to bounce a little bit, though,
Dude,
into
just beat me.
alt leveling, right? Because our alt leveling's time efficient.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they are, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry. I was segueing to that, and then I was like, wait, I totally just misread that. So, my apologies for the confusion. But yeah, so I think we're getting to the time in the season where it's kind of slowing down. People are maybe trying out different games. Who are trying out Classic, run into Fortnite because they just had a big update, and, trying different games. And if you're not into other games, I think people are trying alts. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit today. And there's a listener question later, a little bit about alts, and maybe we'll just kind of bump down to that because it's not actually a listener question, it's a me question. So I'm just going to read it now. I think this is a good thing, and then we can kind of talk about the alt leveling experience because I think it is trash and I think it could be better. So my question, about alts, because I know you play a fair amount of alts. I typically only stick to one a season.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about alts, what is, in your opinion, the best alt leveling experience?
There's so many different answers to this question. And some of it plays into what we talked about earlier. So in my personal experience, the best, because your question is right, what you suggest is a great alt leveling experience as well as just great alt class to have. But you had a hot take in our show notes that just said alt leveling should not exist, right? Like, should alt leveling even exist? Is this something? Is it worth doing? I'm sure we'll dig into that question a little bit. But to answer your question on what the best way to level is, well, I think it depends on what your goal is, right? Yeah. Is your goal to be fast? Is your goal to be experiential? Is your goal just to be like a casual, just soft, like something in the background to do, right? Like, all of those are just such different, because I know people who like leveling just because they like leveling, right? That's just fun to them, going out, completing quests, turning them in. If that is your favorite thing to do, if like you just love questing, this is gonna sound like an odd answer. Give Classic a try. And I think you might have known I might have touched into that. And the funny thing is, I'm not a huge Classic guy. Like, I'll level up to like 15 on Classic and then go back to retail, right? I love retail, but I love end game of retail. And I actually think it's one of the faults with retail right now. And we'll get into it in just a second. But if you like the experience of leveling, Classic is perfect for that. I told you I started my Orc Shaman on Classic Hardcore, and you start out, and literally it's a dude having you pick some apples off cactuses, and another dude just wants you to kill a couple boars, and one dude's like, I lost my necklace, can you go find it, right? And one guy's like, the peons are lazy, can you go wake them up? And that's it, that's all you're doing. And finally they're like, hey, we heard word that the trolls need some help, and you walk over and the trolls are like, yay, the centaurs are bothering us.
Need some help.
And you kill some centaurs. But you're a nobody. You're literally a nobody. And questing kind of feels dangerous. Like, you're actually kind of like, I could die killing some boars, right? So you're trying to be careful. You're trying to go through and quest and level up. And every level takes a little bit longer. It's not as fast as retail. I probably could have leveled like, I don't know, 5 characters to 10 by now, and I'm only level like 7. So it is a very different experience, but it's slow. You get to watch your character grow. Every piece of armor is exciting. Like, you're like, whoa, I got something. This is an upgrade. One of the weird things is professions. So when I play, I don't do professions on retail. I just don't find them fun. I just don't find professions fun.
Yeah.
Other people do. Other people love them. Just not me. I like dungeons. I like raids. I don't like professions. But I love people who do them because that's where I get my armor from. So, but on Classic,
I agree.
On Classic, I do professions. I always do professions on Classic.
Really?
I never don't do professions on Classic. Yeah, so I have a shaman. I literally ran for like 10 minutes to walk, no mount. You have to walk all the way to Orgrimmar from the orc starting zone, just so I could pick, as soon as I had enough gold, so I could buy skinning and tailoring, or skinning and leatherworking, and then walked all the way back. In classic, shamans start with leather, and then they unlock mail at level 40. Clarification.
Okay.
Yep. Because being able to make some of my own armor while I'm leveling saves me a crap ton of money, and also gives me really good armor, especially if I'm playing hardcore and I don't want to die. I want to have my armor as like up to stack. Dude, you know how like I'm really bad about making sure my gear's enchanted and stuff?
Yeah, you're terrible.
I have all my gear enchanted. I'm only like level 7 on classic.
Oh my gosh!
Like now, when I say enchanted, I mean I made 4 leather leather patches, and I just put the leather patches on my armor, and it adds like 4 defense or something, 4 armor to it. So it's not like that crazy. I was like literally standing there because I skinned so many cats. I was literally standing there just passing them out to random players that were passing me. I was like, here you go. Don't die. Stay safe, friend. Stay safe. Here's some leather patches.
Be safe, friend.
Be safe, friend.
Gosh.
Yeah, but it was funny. And the thing about that though is just that that experience is so different, right? You're walking through the world. Every time you enter a new town, you really feel like you're helping that town out. You're kind of exploring. It's kind of It's not like retail where it feels very on rails. This is very off rails, very big, open world, kind of crazy, and it's cool. So if you're looking for a really fun leveling experience, I would try Classic, especially because dungeons in Classic feel endgame, if that makes sense. So when you're leveling and you're like, oh hey, I'm level 15. I'm going to go do a Rage Fire Chasms, or hey, I'm 17, let me go try Shadowfang Keep or something. When you do those dungeons, you actually like, you're like, okay, we need to form a group. There's no group finder. Like you have to go find people to do this dungeon. You find them, you coordinate the group, everybody looks good, their armor looks okay, their levels look okay, and you have to go in, and it's like difficult. And that's kind of where I want to transition now to the conversation of retail. I don't like retail leveling that much. I like alts. Well, the problem with retail is endgame is awesome, but I don't like alt leveling in retail because it's just the leveling experience isn't that fun. But I level alts because I want to play Paladin in Mythic Plus. I want to play my Shaman in Mythic Plus, right? My DK in Mythic Plus. My Monk in Mythic Plus. I want to play all of those things in Mythic Plus. I just don't like leveling them. And so usually I'll try to find whatever the fastest way to level is when I'm doing retail. And 90% of the time, that is just spamming dungeons. So I will like go in and I'll just spam dungeons. But the problem is, unlike Classic, dungeons in retail while leveling are so dumb. They're so dumb. Like, you queue up, you're thrown in there, a bunch of other people are in there. There's no coordination. Half the time, you don't know where to go. No one else knows where to go because it's an old dungeon anyways. But they're great dungeons. Yeah. And you're just kind of like, but you're also kind of speed running through it, right? Like you're trying to go through as fast as humanly possible. So you're like blitzing the dungeon. And it doesn't even matter because everything's tuned super weak. And then you have one dude who's like level 10. And they have like one attack, and they're a healer, right? They're a healer with one actual attack, but they're like triple everybody else's damage combined because of like weird scaling issues.
Right.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then as you get stronger, you feel weaker and weaker and weaker. Contrary to like Classic, where dungeons are the same level all the time. So like, let's say you go to Shadowfang Keep. I want to say it's like level 17 or something. And you go in as a level 16 into Shadowfang Keep, right? You complete it, you get some gear, you go quest a little bit, somebody else asks you to come back and do it. You're level 18 now. You go in, you feel pretty good, right? It feels more like Mythic Plus, where when you get some eye level, when you get some good gear, and you go back into a +2, and you're like, oh, dude, this is so easy compared to like when I was only 565 eye level. Now I'm 600 eye level. This is so much easier. So I speed run I speed run dungeons a lot. Every once in a while, I know in Dragonflight I did. In Dragonflight, I had a couple locations where I would have a friend just go kill a bunch of elite mobs, and I would just stand there and, I don't know, work on something in Photoshop or practice guitar or something. And I would just stand there and I would get bonkers XP. I would get like bonkers XP. That was nice. That was nice. Right now, one thing I've been doing is I've been parking my alts in the anniversary area, and I've literally just been like answering the trivia question every day on my alts. And that gives pretty good XP. It's like pretty passive, so you're not going to level them up really fast that way. But I think by the end of this, they'll probably all have like all my like level 70 to 80 alts will probably have an extra five levels or something.
Oh, that's actually kind of a lot.
Yep. That question gives a lot of XP.
Dang.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I should go do it.
Yeah, and plus you have the anniversary 10% right now. Always knowing how to stack your buffs. For XP.
Oh.
Yeah, extra 10% XP. Questing's good. If you're like, I just really want to quest, where's a fun place to quest? If you have not done the Dragon Isles are really fun. That's always an easy one.
Dragon Isles are pretty cool.
One of my favorites, and this is gonna sound odd, but you gotta trust. If you really want to like quest, if you really want to quest the level, Warlords of Draenor is a really good expansion to level through. Mm-hmm. They failed in a lot of areas on that expansion, missing raids, didn't bring garrisons out quite like we thought they would or they wanted to. However, the questing in Warlords of Draenor is top tier, and there's a lot of quests that are really just kind of like bundled close together, so you can pick up a lot of quests and do a lot at once and get a lot of reward for it. And the zones are beautiful. WoD actually has some gorgeous zones, so that would be another one, especially Alliance side. I think Alliance side is more fun than maybe Horde side for WoD. Both are good though. Both are good. I like the Shadowmoon Valley. I think it is that you quest in on Alliance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done WoD leveling for a good bit, and it is fun.
Yeah.
It's, well, I mean, as fun as leveling can be, right? So, yeah, and to be honest, I am sort of like you in the dungeons, except I think how I do it, and this is kind of just mostly just because of the characters I play, is typically I'll just load up a character. And first of all, if you're not aware, always just park, like at least log into some of your, like if you have intentions of leveling a character, just log in every once in a while in like Stormwind or Orgrimmar so that they keep that double XP buff. Mm-hmm. And because that'll eventually reach 80, and I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, some of mine are ready for that. Or it'll eventually like cap it at 80, right? So
the double XP buff?
Yeah.
I know it has a cap, but I don't think it's that high.
Oh, really? I thought it was.
No, I think it might do one whole level or something. I'll take a look into it. Yeah.
Oh, well, I got misinformation then. Well, that's dumb. Well, anyways, I typically try to park my level 70s
it will grow up to 150% of your level or 15 bubbles of XP. Yep, 15 bubbles of XP.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. Anyways, what I've been doing and how I leveled my alt, because I only have 2 level 80s currently.
Yeah.
How I leveled my alt was I loaded it up with herbalism and mining and just went out and just mined and picked herbs. And then whilst I did that, I would queue up for like dungeons, and in between and in the queue process, I would just go out and mine and herb, because you get like a ton of XP for doing professions.
Yes, you do.
I think you get like 2,000 or 3,000 XP every time you mine a thing or mine a node. So, and on top of that, you're mining, you're picking herbs, and at the beginning of the expansion is really helpful. You pop in the auction house, you sell that, because I'm pretty sure, I'm not gonna lie, I think my alt might have like just as much gold as my main. That's kind of sad to say.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I'm easily like 100 to 200,000 gold on my alt right now. Just
have you ever played the Pandaren starting zone?
The Pandaren? No, I haven't.
Okay, so Pandaren are really interesting, kind of similar to the Drakthir, except one major difference from the Drakthir. One major difference. So when you play a Drakthir, you pick Horde or Alliance when you're picking Drakthir. I think with Pandaren, you technically do now. I think when they first came out, though, you didn't pick, and so it would drop you into the starting zone, and then at the end of the starting zone, you would have to pick Horde or Alliance and which faction. It's possible. It's possible.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, my memory's hazy, so it's possible you actually picked when you first loaded in, and then at the end it doesn't actually sort you into that faction until the very end. I don't remember. Either way, though, Pandaren Starting Zone, you don't have a faction, and there's a guy who levels every expansion to max level in the Pandaren Starting Zone. He's like he doesn't start from 0 again. He like starts from wherever he left off, like the last expansion left off. But he doesn't primarily think through professions, if I remember correctly. He'll just go do professions and like level up. So he is the only. I don't know if he's gotten to max level yet this expansion. I would imagine he's probably not. But he is the only max level character historically in the game that has not had a faction.
Oh wow, that's kind of neat actually.
Yeah,
little fun fact.
Your whole professions leveling remind me of that.
Yeah, I think professions leveling is boring, but like it's better than just kind of sitting around doing quests or waiting in a queue unless you're a tank or a healer. So
yeah,
it kind of works. And since most people are DPS anyways, well, most specs are DPS. So, but that kind of brings me into my next question and kind of another good question on alt leveling. I know you are very into alts. You know, you're an altaholic, if you will, and I'm very much the opposite. I typically only have like one alt that I play. I typically don't branch out from that because, you know, I get into professions on my main.
Yeah.
I get into a lot of other things. So I typically only have time for like one alt. Yeah. And, you know, right now I'm playing a balanced druid as my alt. And you have like 10 alts. So, in your opinion,
I have. Well, right now, for clarity's sake, I have 5. I have 5 level.
5.
Five
oh my
level.
Gosh.
5 level 80s. Dude, that's like nothing, man. I guarantee you, I would guarantee you, most of our listeners probably have more max level alts than I do. I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. But I will say though, the 5 does give me the 25% XP buff though, so that's nice.
That's true. Yeah. See, I really should level more. But I just hate leveling so much. Oh my goodness.
That's fair. Again, though, I think like that's the nature of retail leveling. I think retail needs to redo their leveling process entirely from the ground up. Here's the question. Here's the question I have for you though, right? Because leveling is fun. Like a good leveling experience where that is fun gameplay is good and needed, right? Because you and I both know when I tried to get you into WoW, leveling was what you hated, right? Once you got a chance to do Mythic dungeons and raid, you were hooked. But leveling, you hated leveling. Same with Brunick, right? When Brunick started, hated leveling. Once he got a chance to do Mythic dungeons, raiding, hooked. But on the other hand, I got hooked on WoW from leveling. Leveling was what hooked me back in like Classic. Well, like when it actually came out, like when it was original WoW, like 20 years ago. I got hooked because of the leveling experience. So here's the problem, though. Here's the dilemma. WoW needs a good, fun, engaging leveling experience to make players commit to the game who are new, right? New players like the game, commit to it with a fun, engaging leveling experience. No more, just push through. Just push through till you get to max level. Mm-hmm. Secondarily, players want to be able to swap up their spec and their class for max level content, just as I like to go, I'm going to go run the paladin on this one. I'm going to run my monk on this one. They like to swap it up. There's already enough of a difficulty trying to get gear at max level, let alone getting the characters to max level, right? So those are your two problems, right? You want to allow your consistent long-term players to try out other classes and other gameplay things, but you also want to make sure that it's a fun first-time gameplay experience. And that implies a third part of this question where it's like, you can't separate them, because if you separate them, then the leveling experience can't be fun because you're leveling in an empty world, right? So you can't just say, first-time players have their own experience. Once you're not a first-time player anymore, you join everybody else. That doesn't make any sense. So really, though, right, that's the question. How does WoW have a fun, engaging, world-building leveling experience? Because nobody gets into WoW because of M+ and rating. People get into WoW because it's a compelling MMO. It's a compelling MMO, and then they discover those other elements. So how do you have both a compelling leveling experience and also at the same time have good end game opportunities for people who want to try alts?
Yeah. So, and to be honest, I think this is kind of their. I don't want to say their. What's the word I'm looking for? I think this is their desire for warbands, right? You know,
Yep.
Shameless plug, Warband's podcast. Listen to it.
Warband.
Anyways, I think this is their concept for warbands, but I don't think personally. I think this is like their kind of like, hey, like just try this because I think some people wouldn't like what you're explaining. I think some people like the concept of leveling a character all the way to 80. You know, you learn its rotation, you learn its new things. I mean, there's a lot to learn between 70 to 80. You know, you got 8 or 10 new hero talents. You know, some classes play completely different than they did in Dragonflight, right?
Yeah, but some of it's also the world building, right? Not just the character skill, but also like the player experience.
Yeah. So, you know, I think, you know, there is some takeaway that some people would say, no, I don't want to be able to do that. I want to be able to level my alts and kind of level characters, you know, through the progression. And, you know, to them, hey, you know, let's still make that happen for you. But, you know, for the rest of us, how do we do that? And I think that's where Warbands is kind of going to, personally, I think it's going to take a shift through this expansion where we're going to see, you know, hey, right now you can get loot for your warbands that you can, you know, sell to other or sell, you know, you can trade to your people in your warband, right? Perfect. I think what we're going to see as the expansion goes on is the ability to buy better gear. And you can kind of do that through Delves right now. And I literally just checked, but it's just adventure gear, which isn't really that great. I think, you know, as time goes on, you'll get the ability to buy like champion level gear for your alts through your main. That way, you know, hey, they might not be able to go right into mythic content like you have on your main, but, you know, hey, they might be able to start in normal heroic, right? And then kind of get into that because you're right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? You know, how can I play my alts at the level that I'm playing my main without doing a ton of work, right?
Yeah. You have I think two groups of players ultimately. You have players who just want to do the content, right? And so they're going to log in and go, dude, let me just create my alt at level 80 with max gear. Just give it to me. I just want to do the content, right? And then you have another group, and there's going to be some stragglers in the middle somewhere. Another group that's saying, I just want to play an MMO and have an experience in an amazing world, right? And I think that former group tends to be your more competitive players, tends to be your players who are really enjoying endgame content. That's a lot of fun, right? Like you and I probably fall more in that. I actually do think gear acquisition is good. I think there's elements of the game I like because they incentivize me to do things, right? They incentivize me to do stuff for gear. I like that. That's good. However, I also have to recognize that the things that I like in the game, I am aware make it not fun for someone new coming to the game, right? Someone new coming to the game that's just like, oh, here's a speed run of leveling. Boom. End game. That speed run of leveling feels stupid.
It does.
1 to 80 honestly feels stupid right now.
Yeah,
and half the time you're just being thrown like, okay, so you level 1 to 10 on the tutorial island, which is at least coherent. It's at least coherent and like you kind of understand that there's a little bit of a story going on. You're in the story. You don't need to know too much about any special characters. You don't need to know who Thrall or Jaina are. You're just kind of in this story, right? So you're just going. I do think, though, it holds your hand way too hard, right? It, like, babies you through everything. That's the one thing I liked when you go into hardcore, and it's just like, here's a quest. And you're just like...
Do it.
What? I have to go... What do I... And there's nothing. There's nothing tells you how to do it. And you just have to walk over and be like, oh, I think these are spells. And you hover over one, and you're like, oh, this does a thing. And then you, like, see a boar, and you're like, click the boar, and then click the spell, right? There's something cool about that. But then you get to level 10 on the tutorial island. You go, and it takes you to, let's say you're Alliance. It takes you to Stormwind. A little gnome runs you around and takes you to buy a mount. Boom, you bought a mount. 15 levels later, you have dragon riding.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, what the heck? It's just like speed running you through everything, right? Versus like there's something about the world building. And again, I'm not a classic Andy. I'm not like I'm not in love with classic. I much prefer retail. I much prefer retail.
Yeah.
But there is something beautiful, I think, when you're leveling in classic, and leveling itself is gameplay. It's fun gameplay. And you're leveling in classic, having a fun time, and you see a guy run or like ride by on a mount, and you're like, whoa, they have a mount. And you're level 15, and you're like, when do I get a mount? And you look it up, and it's like, oh, I don't get one till level 40, right? It all of a sudden like builds this dynamic of like, there's cool stuff that exists in this world. I want to be able to one day have access to that cool stuff too. I'm going to keep working at it. And the way the game's set up right now, it kind of tries to make you feel like you're the superhero right off the bat. Like you start off feeling strong, and then you start feeling weaker over time. You level up feeling weaker. Yeah. It's weird. It's weird.
No, I agree. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what else to say to that. But to kind of finish up this alt talk, that way we can get into some other listener questions and wrap this podcast up. Even though I did rant a bit about the leveling experience. That's okay.
It's a big one to me.
Just what do you personally think is a good alt class? Like if you could give one class that like, hey, like if someone wants to just maybe someone even newer to the game that they just kind of want to get into the game, because technically, an alt class is something that you just kind of want to, learn quickly. You just kind of want to do some end game content with every once in a while. So,
yeah,
so what do you think is a great alt class?
I mean, I don't.
I have a couple good DPS alt classes if you want to give a good tank alt class.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what the question ultimately is, right? Like, is it what's easy? Like, what's easy to learn? What's fun to play? All those kind of change up. Well, I would say it's a weird one. I think tanks are generally really easy to quest in. If you just want to go questing, tanks are generally very self-sufficient. You have decent damage profiles while you're leveling still. So tanks can be really fun, I think, as alts to level through questing. However, if you're going into dungeons, if you're looking at endgame content and you're not familiar, let's say this is your first, tanks are hard because you're kind of expected to know all this stuff going into it.
Yeah.
However, if you are familiar with dungeons for the most part and how they work, even if you're not familiar with them exactly, but you're mostly familiar with them, then tanks are fine because you'll pick it up as you go. But it's tanks can be really fun for leveling, particularly.
Do you think there's one that you would kind of like? What's your go-to alt class? I know. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, Paladin's pretty easy to use for a go-to leveling class. I love DK. Obviously, Blood DK is fun. However, Paladin's pretty good because it gives you some extra heals as well. So if you're leveling with friends or something, especially if you're leveling an alt with friends that maybe don't have any WoW experience, that gives you like WoG or something. You can off heal them real fast while you're leveling and questing, and then obviously tank to help them out. But also those give you options like Paladin, Druid, Monk. They give you options to try out multiple roles, right? If you want to try tank, healer, DPS as you're leveling, you can kind of swap around.
Yeah, I was gonna say Monk is probably a good alt class to try as well, just because one, you have the rotation of 3 that you can kind of go around with it, and 2, they kind of, for the most part, play pretty similarly. I think it's one of the rare classes in WoW, and maybe Paladin's another one, but
yeah,
their play style is pretty similar. Like it doesn't differ really. Yeah. I mean, your goal is to punch things. Like there's really no other goal outside of Monk other than punch things.
Yeah. Yeah. We got one more question, or two. We got 2 more questions from viewers or listeners. No video yet. Question from Verbata: is it even worth having enchants on your gear while you level, or should you just wait to get geared up using delves as you get to that later content?
Yeah, I would say no, and really, to be honest, I wouldn't enchant your gear unless you're doing end game content like Mythic Plus and raids. It's with the price of enchants on the auction house right now, it's not worth your gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would pretty much hold the same. Enchants are fun, but they are like the icing on the cake for your gear, right? In terms of your gear.
Yes.
So while you're leveling, you know you're replacing stuff frequently, you're replacing stuff quickly, and you're not really doing anything while leveling that is challenging every like bit of skill that you have, right? Enchants are that piece that you get when it's like, okay, I'm giving my 100% right now. I'm using my rotation to the best of my ability. I am still kind of struggling. That's where enchants are great because they just give you that little extra boost, enchants, gems, etc. So when you're leveling, it's not that important because you're replacing the gear fast. You don't need to juice out that little extra stat. And as Chicken said, they're really expensive. Enchants, now obviously, if you're leveling, you're not buying War Within enchants. You're buying whatever enchants are related to that expansion. And so they're definitely going to be a lot cheaper. But I've never done it. I've never once leveled in alt and been like, oh, let me buy enchants for this alt. Now, your question kind of implies a second bit, right? That isn't leveling, but maybe I level at max level, right? So you said, or just wait to get geared up using delves as you get to that layer content. I mean, granted, I don't gear up in delves anymore after I ranted about it the last few weeks. But what I will say though is that I brain farted for a second, but I'm back. What I will say is that. For you, enchanting should be at the moment that you feel like you're starting to slow down in the content that you're doing. Mm-hmm. So if you still feel like you're speeding through the content you're doing, then you probably don't need enchants. But if you're like, oh, it's starting to feel a little bit slower, it's starting to feel trickier, I need to juice a little bit extra out. If you're prog and raid with your guild and you're like, oh, we're in heroic and we just need that extra push, enchants are great. If you're in dungeons, you need that extra push, enchants are great. Where I'm at right now, I enchant all my gear on my DK because my DK is, I think, 627 eye level right now. And most of the gear it has at this point, or over half, I think it's over half. Over half the gear on my DK is gear that is not going to be replaced easily, if at all, ever, right? It's mostly mythic gear. Or myth gear I might replace if something is more bis. That's also myth that drops.
Yeah.
And the other slots I have are hero. And so I know if I do replace them, I'm just replacing them one time. So even then, it's very worth it for me to get a chance and to gem everything because I know that I'm not replacing it easily.
Yep. 100%. You're right. Yeah, and then we have another viewer question from Bula. Any tips for targeting the right mobs for interrupts on big, messy pools? I have a focus kick macro, and that works if there's 2 important casters in the pool, but less than that, things get crazy. So my quick advice would be press Slappy Hands, A-Bomb Limb, and pray. Just kidding. What do you think on this one? I know you're the tanking expert here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's this is actually an area that I'm particularly not very knowledgeable in. It's not really, it's not really a strength of mine. I'm usually pretty aware of major things that need to be kicked. And so if I know something that has to be kicked, I'm usually looking at that thing that has to be kicked. For 2 reasons. One, if it has to be kicked, killing it faster is usually better, right? That's usually the first thing you want to go down if you're kicking it frequently. On the rare occasions that it's not the thing you're kicking frequently, you probably want to have somebody who's maybe dedicated. Or if you're not trying to kill the thing you're kicking frequently, maybe you want to have somebody who's dedicated to that thing. But I don't know of any targeting macro that would work for that, because I'm not even sure how that would work. Like, would it have to target if a certain spell is being cast, right? And then every macro has to be specific for that one specific mob. So I don't know. Usually though, what you try to do is communication's important. Even if you're not in VC, communication's the most important thing. So a good example would be in Necrotic Wake, when you go on the bridge where you have the 2 melee guys who have the fear, right? Like the big fear circle.
Yep.
Usually what I'll do is when I get up there, I'll ping one. Kind of as like a, hey, this is mine. I got this one. And that's my focus. I'll interrupt him, and usually then somebody else will get the other one. Or I'll type in. I'll be like, I'll I'll kick the one I ping, right? And I'll just ping that one. And I'll ping it. And that way they know that's the one Swag's got. Somebody else will get the other one. Communication, I think, is most important. Last thing I'll say to this, there might be a trick to this one. And I know X on our Discord, who is extremely knowledgeable in this type of stuff, said he was going to also give a text answer to this question on Discord when he has some time tonight or tomorrow. So
nice.
Probably before this episode even goes live, there will be a text response in there. X is brilliant when it comes to add-ons, macros, and other stuff for high-level content.
Yeah, and when it comes to general kicking, to be honest, and interrupts, I feel like this was embedded in me in WoW at one point, and it was when I learned about what kicks were, and you were just like, yeah, when it's that yellow bar, when the yellow bar comes up, every class has what we call an interrupt or a kick, and you can get rid of that, and it interrupts it, and they can't cast it. And I learned it at such a I learned at such a young age in my WoW career that anytime I see that bar, I just quick glance at my weak aura thing that tells me that my cooldowns, and if I see my kick is not interrupt or not on cooldown, I click it.
Yeah.
And basically my judgment behind that is, and the question is asking, hey, if there's two or more, and I'm thinking of in Stone Vault with those dumb little things that are like free casting, and then they do the cast that heals.
Yep, I was about to bring that up.
So basically, my go-to is I kick regardless, in the hope that someone else is waiting to kick the more important one. And if they don't, then I also have, for DK's, asphyxiation, which is a stun that will basically interrupt it, and then it loses that cycle because it stuns them for, I think, 5 seconds. So they go back to the free casting until they loop around back to the healing cast.
So I'm actually the guy who when we get to those mobs, or that's the female dwarves, right? Which it sounds but like all the earthen in Stone Vault are male, except the female earthen are the ones that cast the heal, if I remember correctly. Or for the most part, it works out that way.
Yep.
And so they're casting some type of random bolt or something, and then they'll cast like a heal. And I will always wait. I'll watch them free cast, and as soon as I see the heal start, that's why I interrupt. You mentioned asphyxiate. Yeah, you have stuns as well. Stuns are great. Like if you have like a shaman in your group, they can throw their stun totem down. Those are great. And then you also have what are called stops. Stops are things that are not technically interrupts, but they forcibly stop the cast. Now, in previous expansions and previous seasons, stops would stop the casting, and then it basically worked as an interrupt because it had to wait until their cast cycle was ready again, and then it would start going. However, in the War Within, that does not work the same way anymore. So a great example is Death Grip. As a tank, I have 2 of them on my DK. If I Death Grip a mob that's casting, they will immediately start casting again, right? Which sometimes is okay. Sometimes if I see a mob and it's almost got his cast off, and I'm like, okay, my interrupt is not ready, I will Death Grip them because nobody else is interrupting them. And I'd rather Death Grip them and have the cast restart, so maybe then somebody else will finally see it and get it.
Yes.
I think on a few occasions I've like Death Gripped, let it get back near, and then Death Gripped again, and then finally had enough to pull off my own interrupt. Just way long enough off those Death Grips. But I believe Zordic, though, is going to give an answer in Discord that maybe adds some more information there as a tool that you can use. But the trick is really the big thing is communicating with the team and knowing kind of who's doing what. VC, if you're running with guildies, VC is a huge benefit. But I understand obviously we're not always running dungeons with voice chat. Just pings are super important. I actually rebound ping to be the on my mouse wheel. The click of my mouse wheel now pings. Kind of like it would for like an FPS game or something.
Yeah.
And that makes it really easy because then what I'm using to aim the ping is the same thing I'm using to place the ping. And so
That's pretty clutch.
It makes it really easy for me to ping things fast.
Yeah. Speaking of, yeah, no, I don't even know. I was gonna make some cool segue, but it didn't work out. So
yeah, man. Speaking of pings, why don't you guys follow the link in the description, join our Discord, and start pinging everyone.
just literally ping everyone.
No at everyone. But we do though have a Discord for our community here. It's been around for a while now, but a lot of WoW players in there who love to talk about the game, love to ask questions. It's where you can also ask questions in our questions for the pod channel that we'll answer live on the podcast. Or you can drop your questions if you look in the description wherever you're watching. Click that fan mail or send us a text, I think it's called. Send us a text button, and you can send in your question. If you do it through the text in, just know it doesn't give us any information about you other than I think maybe what state. Maybe I think it's like what state you're texting from.
Yeah, I think so.
So if you could just in that text put your in-game character name so that we have something to call you by. You can do your in-game character name and server if you want. That's fun too. However, that's everything we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Warband. We've had so much fun recording this. It's been a blast. This is episode 13 for us, and it's kind of crazy to think about how many we've had so far. It kind of blew my mind what I was thinking about today. This is like, what, 3 months now of episodes?
Yeah, pretty close.
Wow.
Yeah,
dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's pretty dang close.
Anyways, we will see you next week.
Yep.